Welcome. This is the Straight Out of BS podcast. I'm Jordan, your host. As usual, I wanted to make a couple announcements. We're literally 3 subscribers away on Anchor Radio from ads being enabled, which means that my channel on Anchor can become monetized. So I can upgrade the podcast. I can get a new microphone, all that stuff. So yeah, if you know anybody that hasn't subscribed to the Anchor Radio channel, that would be awesome. I'm literally 3 subscribers away from that. Really appreciate it. We're almost at 3K views, so keep pushing to break that goal and then push past it. And then also, we're almost at 500 hours of view time, so this is crazy. We're almost at 1,000 hours of view time. It's crazy to me. I never thought it was going to get this big, but yeah, it's getting even bigger. So thank you guys for all your support. There's a new design in the merch store, so if you want to go over to the merch store and check it out and help support the channel that way, that'd be cool. Also, I wanted to let people know that it's not like you don't have to or whatever, but it'd be nice. And then also, Anchor Radio, subscribe. If you're on Anchor Radio, you can like subscribe monthly. There's a dollar option, a $5 option, and a $10 option. If you guys want to support the channel like monthly or whatever. So just thought I would let you guys know that. And let's see. I'd like to do a moment of silence for the person still struggling with addiction, with thoughts, whatever. So on the count of 3, I'm going to do a moment of silence. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and with that being done, thank you guys so much for your support. And we're doing a part 2 today. Meyla?
Meyla.
Meyla? Okay. Meyla has come back for a part 2. So she's actually the first person to do a part 2 on this channel. So I'm looking forward to it. So you guys already kind of know her from the last video, but just briefly, could you introduce yourself again for the person that might be watching this video for maybe the part 2 is their first video they saw, so maybe you could do like a short, brief intro of like where you went and like what years.
Yeah. So my name is Meyla, and I went to CrossCreek Manor in Laverton, Utah, from January 26, 1999, until February 10th, 2002. So that's 3 years, 2 weeks, and 4 hours. And I had a bit of an unusual experience there. So some of the stuff that I noticed, I'm not sure anyone else would have noticed. So I'm glad to be coming back on and talking about some of that with you.
For sure, for sure. I know that you had like some specific things that you wanted to talk about. Do you want to go ahead and jump into those?
Okay. I think um I think one of the interesting things, let's see, where should I start? Um I guess with the people who aren't here to tell their story, there's 317 kids at least that have died in these programs, and way more than that have died after from side effects directly related to the program. Sometimes they kill themselves because they can't handle what happened. Sometimes they overdose on drugs because they're just trying to block the pain of what happened. And these are irreplaceable kids. People that grow up more broken because of what they experience there. It's a really crazy place, and it's hard to explain what it was like. Um, hard to think of how to get it through to people who weren't there, because it was such a different world than the world that we live in now. Um, but let's think about like punishment. and the tape room. Because a lot of W.A.S.P programs had a tape room where people would we would listen to the 100 greatest people and the world's 100 greatest books, and then fill out a little bubble answer sheet afterward, um, showing that we paid attention and we learned something from it. Um, and I wouldn't have known how much of the bizarre stuff in there was deliberate if I hadn't been asked to help set up the tape room when we moved from one facility to the other. So the first thing that they had me do is go to each classroom and collect all of the broken desks, the most broken, things that were missing, things that wobbled, and then we brought them all into the tape room. And then we organized it so that the most broken desks were up in front around the staff. So that's where the staff buddies would sit. Um, and the weird effects of rules. Um, So like we weren't allowed, tape room disruption was something you could get in trouble for, and that was a category 2 offense. So that meant that you would spend at least 5 hours, if you were unlucky, maybe 7 or 8 hours in the tape room listening to tapes, as a result of it. And they would consider it tape room disruption if you wobbled your desk. Like if you made the desk legs wobble back and forth. But these were deliberately the broken desks that had broken legs, and they were generally broken where the front legs were shorter than the back. And I never really knew that this was a form of like physical torture to put someone in a chair that is deliberately sloping so that it's hard to sit in the chair. But this was listed in the Russian prison book that I read about methods of psychological and physical abuse that got used on for people in Russian prisons. So the effect of sitting in a seat that's sloping forward like that is to constantly be wanting to slide out of the seat. And being required to not wobble the seat at all means you have to sit kind of with your legs locked in one position. You can't shift your weight back and forth on your butt to change the position, because that would wobble the desk and get you one of those consequences. And they acted like if you did it once out of the hours that you were there, like you were doing it very loudly and deliberately, and it was like super disruptive to the class. So the effect is to make your entire butt and legs fall asleep. You have to lock them in this uncomfortable position to try to keep from sliding out of the chair, and you have to keep them in exactly that position to keep the desk from wobbling. And I never would have put all of this together if I hadn't been reading that Russian book and also been the one person who got called aside to go collect these particular desks for the tape room. Like, um, but a lot of the abuse there was really bizarre like that. Um, for
Like
instance,
almost subconscious. Like you don't even realize it's happening to you. So it's kind of like you're gas. I feel like that's gaslighting a little bit too, but
yeah.
it's like unconscious gaslighting. You know what I mean?
And Ron Garrett called it BFO tapes, tapes till your butt falls off. So I think they were aware that sitting in there on a hard wooden seat for 12 or 14 or unlimited hours in a row is going to make you have physical negative outcomes. But from a body standard, that can give people sciatic issues that would last the rest of their life. That can give people back issues from being stuck in that uncomfortable position where they can't shift their weight. Um, there's a lot of negative things that could come out of simple things like that. And the easy thing for them was that it was passive. They didn't have to actively sit on someone or physically hold them down to cause this pain. All they had to do was just tell them to sit there. And CrossCreek was lazy about that. They really loved their passive stuff. Another example, they like to make the isolation room very, very cold, like literally 50 degrees sometimes. The staff would be literally in there with a winter coat. And this would be when it's over 100 degrees outside. They would not give us pants. We would be in there with just like sweat shorts and like a polo shirt. Um, and sometimes they would take away girls' clothing, and so that they would be in there maybe in a bra and underwear, or and they would say, "Oh, we're worried you're going to kill yourself with your clothing. That's why you can't have a sweatshirt in there." But they did that deliberately to make that cold, and that again is another Russian prison torture method, is a cold box, and that came from the Korean War also, that the North Korea was using on South Korean soldiers, and U.S. soldiers and POW camps, punishment cells that were deliberately really cold or deliberately really hot. One time they did something really dangerous and they almost killed a girl. They took her from inside in the 50-degree temperature, and every 15 minutes they swapped her from inside to outside. So they would walk her out and it was over 100 degrees outside. And when you do this to someone every 15 minutes, like their body doesn't have time to react to the change in temperature. And she literally passed out and had to be taken to the emergency room because she was dangerously overheating from this in, out, in, out, in, out every 15 minutes. And that is straight out of a Korean War and or Russian political prisons to do that. I've heard in places like Samoa that the punishment box, because they had like a much smaller isolation room than we did, and it was outdoors in its own little building. And I heard theirs was deliberately very, very hot in the sun, and kids would bake in there during the day. Um, Ways of trying to break someone's will without leaving physical marks behind. Um, and again, if I hadn't have been reading the book, I wouldn't have known that someone would be doing that deliberately. And then talking to Ron Garrett later, who was the program director,
What was
and
that
listening.
book? What was that book? What was that book for in case people want to read it?
So it's by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and it's Gulag Archipelago Part 1. You need to get the non-condensed version. It's like 1,400 pages. And the section where they talk about psychological pressure and persuasion in this is like maybe 60 or 70 pages, about 130 pages in or so, depending on what edition you get. Just don't get the abridged edition because it's completely missing from that. It was really surreal because actually I was doing a book report on that book and reading it while I was in the program. So I was reading about all of these methods.
Wow.
I was looking around and seeing them being used on my friends and me. And some of them were pretty intense, like mock executions and like making us write our own obituary, things like that that were just nothing a child should ever go through. Um, and
I'm surprised they let you read that or
I
let you
know
have access to it.
how it got into it was in the library and it was on the reading list for 12th grade. I have no idea why. The only thing I can think of is the educational side was pretty separate from the behavior modification side. So maybe the person who wrote the book list or who copied the book list didn't really know what was in that book and wasn't aware. And I certainly wasn't going to let them know. I was hoping someone else would read it, but it had things for who had checked it out. And I was the only one who had checked it out as far when I read it. And that's probably because it was 1,400 pages and like
They also might
that's
have picked the longest book or something. But also they might have done it on purpose so that the reader would then see, oh wait, if they're smart enough and critically thinking enough, and internalized everything, they'd be like, oh shit, this is actually happening around me. But there's still nothing you can do about it. So to
yeah,
know that everything's happening, but there's still nothing you can do about it.
yeah.
That I feel like that'd be
And
more.
they would play tapes to hope, like motivational tapes and things like that. And one of the tapes they played was something from Viktor Frankl, who lived through the Holocaust, talking about how he retained his dignity in that kind of situation. And I was really surprised that that book was there, that audio tape was there too, because that seemed like giving people really bad ideas about how to maintain their emotional will to resist in that kind of a situation. Or like one of the most disturbing things about the facility was that they tried to rob us of who we were. Like if kids liked rap music before they got in, they weren't allowed that. If they called it in their image. And basically the only thing you were allowed to present was kind of like a preppy Mormon kind of attitude. So holding on to who we were became so important to keeping a mental state that's like being able to survive and move forward, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, not to mention all the mind control that was going on.
Yeah. And Ron Garrett was very blatant about it. He said that our brains were dirty and that we needed brainwashing. Like he wasn't subtle about it. He openly admitted that they were attempting to brainwash us. Um and um that's kind of similar to, I think, why they used all of the Russian political techniques coming from that is because they're trying to change our ideologies and the way we think. Um, and that had to start with convincing us that who we are now is bad and that it's all a fake thing that we put up to keep the world out. Um,
And that somehow we're at fault for it.
yeah.
Which some of us probably were. I did some fucked up shit before I got sent there. I did some disrespectful stuff that I shouldn't have done. So some of us were, to an extent, but also there was a lot of people that weren't. So
Yeah. Well, even the kids who did more severe things before they got in still just needed more intense help. Like, I'm convinced that no one in there was a bad kid, that we all just needed some help. And even the kids that fought or the kids who were hard asses, like my friend Liz Weaver, I went to CrossCreek with her and she transferred there. She went to CASA and also to High Impact. And she uh she got um she got singled out for more abuse because she had kind of the hard ass kind of attitude. And that's because she was abused in other facilities. And I say this because she's not around to tell her story anymore. And because I promised her that I wouldn't stop telling the truth about these places.
Yeah.
They just couldn't handle the abuse that they did there. Um, I mean, we were threatened with high impact, but to actually go through it is very different. Just seeing with my own eyes the changes that kids went through, they would come back physically burned, like sometimes burned like from a campfire, but always extremely sunburnt. Like it looked like they had been sunburnt the entire time that they were there, and they were turning really tan and really dry. Um, and how they would just gobble up the worst food that we had, like it was the um like it was the best thing they had in years,
Yeah.
uh or like they were starving. And um finding out what they got fed, yeah, they were really underfed there and didn't have nutrition, and like um getting a single piece of squash for a reward, like having to eat chicken bones, the most crazy stuff. My friend Liz was actually raped in high impact by staff there on her 16th birthday in the dog cages, in isolation, trying to break her will. Um, she's a really strong woman, you know, and they hated that. Um,
Do you think they? Do you think they were? Well, I think I know the answer to this, but do you think they were tougher on girls than boys, or do you think it was like somewhat equal, like in places like High Impact, from what you heard? I guess I should be technically. I'm also going to ask the people that I've interviewed from High Impact this same question. But what do
yeah,
you think? What did
yeah.
you hear?
Um, I know at our facility it was different for the boys and the girls. We heard that they were more physical with the boys. They were more like pushing them to the ground, or like staff want to get up in their face, or more sitting on them. All of the aggressive, really large staff worked on the male side. And was if a girl did something where they wanted to restrain her, they would call staff over from the boys' side because they were more physical. So I assume that the boys got more physical stuff all of the time, not just when they called someone over. I do know at one point in time there was a gay man after I left. There was a gay boy who got sent, and apparently it was too tough for him on the boys' side, and they put him on the girls' side with the girls. And um, he just was in a girls' group, and I don't know if the demographics were different, um, because um, like I don't know what if different thing I would suspect different things would make someone want to send a son versus a daughter, you know?
Yeah.
Um, but we weren't really allowed to interact with the boys hardly at all. And by that I mean if the boys were walking by, we had to turn and face the wall and cover our eyes like this and get up against the wall so that we couldn't physically look at the boys while a line of them walked by. Um, I don't think that did anything at all to make the boys not want to look at us, because we basically turned around and put our butts towards them. I really don't think they thought that through very well. But that we'd interact with them in seminars. Um, some upper level stuff, boys and girls would interact occasionally, but I almost never qualified to go and do upper level activities because I was always in trouble for stupid stuff, even if I tried really hard to not be in trouble. Um, just basic stuff um, like sometimes my job would be to clean the bathroom, and other people like my job was to do the floors, for example. Someone else's job is to do the shower, someone else's job is to do the toilet. Well, I have to be the last one to do that because I have to clean the floor once everyone's done, because if
Yeah.
there's a single hair found on the floor, I'm going to get a consequence. And it might be something very minor. We're going to say like half an hour in the tape room, or it might be something where it would put me over the edge and get more consequences, like maybe 8 hours in the tape room, just depending on how much trouble I had already get in. But I found it completely impossible to not get these kind of tiny violations, because they were just so picky all the time, and there was no excuses. Like one time, I got assigned to vacuum a hallway, and I was leaving with the first shift of girls to go to a different facility, and then a whole bunch of girls were trampling through the hallway. And then it got inspected. Well, every single day it would fail inspection because I could only vacuum it before the girls would walk through a second time. Like, but there was no explaining these problems. There was no getting out of trouble. It was just, well, you violated this rule. And um, every single day I got one of these. And the more you get the same consequence over and over again, the more trouble you get. They treat it like it's like defiance or like maliciousness, you know?
Yeah. Did they have any upper level groups there? Like once you got, well, first of all, was there such thing as like junior staff there? I forgot.
They didn't have junior staff. The only things that were kind of like that, we had something called Manor service, which is where one upper level would volunteer to go with a lower level group for a week. And it was more like a volunteering thing. You couldn't write up people consequences or like um you were expected to talk to the lower levels and like counsel them and try to get them to cooperate and that kind of thing, and give them your experience from going through the program that far. But we weren't in charge of them. The only time I saw something similar to that was one time when they were really low staffed, because like the I can't remember if one or two girls ran away, and they had upper levels got like watching the hallway to make sure that girls weren't gonna they were really worried that a whole bunch of girls were going to try to flee because the staff numbers were so low because they were out looking for the girl who went away. And they basically made the upper levels be staff for that night, but that wasn't a normal thing. um
Yeah. How are the cabins laid? Excuse me. How are the cabins laid out, or like for each family? How is it laid out at CrossCreek? Because for Spring
um
Creek Lodge, we had at Spring Creek Lodge we had on the boys' side we had two like big cabins that had uh that were split into two sides, and then those were the boys, and then you'd have a family on the top and a family on the bottom, and then for the girls you'd have two more cabins like that. On the bottom there'd be one family, and then on the top there would be another family, and there was magnets on the doors and all of that. How similar was that to Cross Creek?
okay, there was a lot of buildings at CrossCreek. So I'm going to start describing the Manor building, which is the one that used to be a polygamous house and ends up looking cute in all the promotional videos. So that was like a giant house for someone who had like 30 kids or something like that. And each one of the rooms upstairs were bedrooms. So there were three stories, 2 stories and a basement, and the classrooms were in the basement. The isolation room was in the basement, and it was 2 rooms with concrete like cinder block walls. They all of the basement had the cinder block behind it, but only the isolation room had it like visible and out where you could see it. And it had 2 little stalls in it. It was the same size as the rest of the room. Every room downstairs was exactly the same size. I would say about 12 feet by 30 feet, maybe. Maybe maximum 16 by 40. Just going by my memory. And at the front of the room, it was kind of like hotel rooms, how when you open up a room, there's a bathroom on the side immediately, and a kind of a hallway, and then you'd go into a slightly larger part of the room. So the basement smelled the whole time I was there. It only got worse as the time went along. When I first got there, that was one of the first things I complained about, is it smelled like dead rodents in the basement. And the smell just got way worse over time, especially when the boys were in that. When I came back in after the boys that had been in there, the basement smelled really bad. It had carpet on the floor. The tape room was down there. That's where I set up the tape room in that story I was talking about. In the tape room was at the Manor building. So upstairs, they had a large bedroom that you would start out in. It had 4 bunk beds, so could sleep a total of 8 people. It was a really large room, maybe 25 feet by 80 feet or so, with really large doors. And that's where they orientated kids. That's where they orientated me when I first got in, and they went through all my stuff and read me the rule book and like kind of helped me to start understanding where I was and what was going on. We had bathroom stalls off of that, like 3 stalls, like a public bathroom. There were other bedrooms downstairs on the ground floor there. I think they put the new girls there because that was like close to the staff and stuff. And then so if you got trusted more, you were allowed up on the 2nd story. This all overlooked this courtyard. I actually found it really pretty. It was really surreal to experience that kind of abuse in a setting that was so pretty. There was this, in the middle, there was this tree, like so large that it was like taller, growing up towards the top of the 2nd story. And there were like these planter boxes. At one time there had been a fountain, but that was before I got there. And so at different times, this building got used for different things. When I first got there, that was the building that we did our the lower levels got put in, and then after a while they moved the lower levels over the building that I like to call the compound. It's the one that used to be a movie theater before CrossCreek took it over, and it had the cafeteria, the seminar room, the like gym area, all the school classrooms. Sometimes they would do school in the Manor building in the basement. Sometimes they would do what they called group therapy down there, which was like attack therapy. They had, so at the compound, it started out a much smaller building with a movie theater and just a little bit of extra stuff. And over time that I was there, they built it out more and more. Right now it's a hotel. So I'm pretty confident that there's not any kids being abused there anymore because they're just being a normal hotel. Um, but that's where like the seminars took place. That's where we had PE and that kind of thing. And there were a lot of dorms there. It was like if you've been in a hotel with like a hallway where there's just rooms off to the side, it was a lot like that. It had the um, the kind of screens on the window where it's like a big metal sheet with a bunch of holes punched into it. Um, and there was a lot of lights in the courtyard area. I remember it constantly shining in our eyes when we were trying to sleep. Um, the the building had a fire alarm. I remember thinking that if I wanted to leave, one of the ways to do it would be to pull the fire alarm and try to run out. Apparently there was a fire exit on the bottom floor, which theoretically should have opened up if someone pulled the fire alarm to allow kids to go outside and escape. But I have no idea if that was actually followed. We had the giant like 2,000-pound magnets on the door and like a swipey kind of like white keypad thing that the staff would have. So I've seen 4 girls try very hard to push with all their might on one of those doors and like couldn't even budge it. So it was pretty locked down, especially over time as they built around and it became like a solid compound on all 4 sides with like the outdoor courtyard in the middle. Um, that made it way harder for girls trying to get out to escape.
Yeah. Where did they have like PC2? Because I went to PC2 there. What building was that in? I
When I
swear.
went to PC2, we had to go to a different facility, and I believe it was in Las Vegas. I think Vegas. No, it could have been Vegas. Um, it was done at a different location in a hotel, in like a conference center in the hotel.
When I went from Spring Creek to PC2, they took us to CrossCreek, the CrossCreek facility, and we were in. I swear, because we went in the courtyard, and then there was like this big building to the left.
Yeah. Were you in a room with carpet on the walls or in a room with like a gym floor, like with wood floor?
Carpet
Or
on.
like,
I think carpet on the walls.
yeah, that's what I call the seminar room. We did PE in that room. And that's also where they did the rape reenactments and some of the more really crazy processes or like things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I swear I saw the cafeteria. I didn't get to see much of the facility there, but like they didn't let you walk around and shit. But yeah, that's crazy. But they had you go to Vegas for your PC2?
They had us go to another big city. It was definitely farther than St. George. Um, but I'm not entirely sure where we went to. I was really in shock. I had just gotten put in the tape room and lost all my levels a week before then, so I wasn't expecting to go home. And the whole experience was very surreal. So I was just trying really hard not to do something to screw it up, because I was certain that I wasn't going to go home like 4 days before that. So I was just trying not to screw it up.
And you did you get pulled?
No, I graduated. They sent me through graduation at PC2. Um, it was really weird situation. I think they just realized they couldn't convince my parents to let me stay any longer. And even though I had a problem right before I left, and Ron Garrett and I had a disagreement where he had told me I could do something, and then when I did it, he got me in a lot of trouble for it. Um, but um, I talked more about that in part one. If people want to hear more, they should listen to that. Um,
Yeah. Did they did they do wilderness at CrossCreek? Did they do like a form of wilderness where they'd send you off into the wilderness for like so many days?
we had a hike that was a thing you could volunteer to do. And there were a lot of girls who came from a wilderness place and then got sent to us. I would say maybe 1 in 10 girls there came from a wilderness facility. Um, and generally, we're just glad that it wasn't freezing cold and we got food supplied like
Yeah.
in on our plate every day, 3 times a day.
Yeah.
Um,
Did they let you work kitchen there? Did you have
yeah,
kitchen days?
yes, there was a hard contest to see who could volunteer for kitchen. And that was one of the weird things is like um they would, when you volunteered in the kitchen, you could take whatever you wanted from the line and you could make it however you wanted. So you could make yourself a reasonable amount of palatable food really easily. And I volunteer at first I thought, why the hell does anyone volunteer in the kitchen? Well, not just to show up and look like you're willing to work the program and help out, but that that extra food was great. So like for instance, the sausage gravy was really gross. Almost no one liked the biscuits and gravy. That was the sausage that was labeled not for human consumption that I found. But the vegetarian biscuits and gravy was pretty palatable. It was just like a white sauce gravy with no sauce. So everyone who worked in the kitchen could have the vegetarian gravy, and then they could pick whatever they wanted from the rest of the meal and make it up in such, and a bunch of other stuff too that was left over in the kitchen. And like with permission, even eat yogurt at every meal, which was really popular to do. Or like have the leftover bagels, or like go hunting in the large, we had a large walk-in fridge. Just go hunting in there for something that looked really tasty, and then go ask the kitchen staff if you were allowed to eat it. Um, so it was like a survival and like um comfort kind of thing. And yeah, we volunteered. I mean, there was sometimes they would always pick let the higher levels who wanted to volunteer work first. But sometimes there were so many qualified kids that they had to like do eeny meeny miny mo, or like try to schedule girls where they got to work in the kitchen every other shift or something like that. um I don't feel like it was fair. I don't think it's good to make kids volunteer in that kind of a dangerous situation. I know I definitely um, put my hands into really hot stuff. And if I had gotten caught injuring myself by mistake in the kitchen, like we had trays, like the hot water trays for serving out of, with like the square and rectangular like dishes that would go in like at a buffet table. And if you would burn yourself or injure yourself or crush your finger or whatever, it's automatically assumed that that's a self-inflicted injury. So that's the most serious consequence you could get. That's like a Cat 5. So that's like 100 tape credits. That, and you could do 3 tape credits an hour. So that's 30 some hours of, if everything goes perfectly, of time in the tape room on staff buddy, always within arm's length of the staff, only allowed to talk about 4 things: food, water, meds, bathroom. And in the sense that I need to go to the bathroom, can I please get a drink of water? Can I please refill my water bottle? Those kind of things. Not talking about, I think the water tastes better last week than this week. You know what I mean? No casual conversation with anyone. No emotional conversation with anyone. If someone was sad, they weren't allowed to talk about it. Just on silence all the time. And I want to point out that we have known as a society that it's dangerous to put people in isolation and to put them on silence, and that that's not therapeutically useful. We found this out before my grandmother was born. None of these staff members who were doing it were alive when they discovered this was a problem. Their whole life, it has been known scientifically that putting people in isolation, especially putting kids in isolation, is dangerous and counterproductive and not good for them. And they did everything they could at every opportunity to try to fight it, to hide it. At what point in time the inspectors came in and told them that they weren't allowed to have an isolation room? Well, they couldn't get rid of it because they had to have something to do with kids that were that they wanted to punish, that weren't going along with the program. And so they changed the name of it to special needs from isolation, and continued right on doing the exact same thing, like leaving kids in there for days, extreme silence, nothing to look at, no books, no crayons, no colored pencils, no paper, no talking about therapy, no anything. I mean, when I was in isolation, the previous girl before me had bled on the floor, and it had made a blood stain, and probably about this big, on the floor. I think it was period blood, but I'm not entirely sure. Sometimes they would make people sit in there with no pants on while they were on their period. And it took me a week to convince them to let me have a wet rag so that I could clean the blood off the floor, because I didn't want to sit in the isolation room in, like, on or near someone else's blood. Like, this just all sounds so different than the world we live in now, you know?
Oh yeah, it does. And it's getting even crazier in the world right now. Did they? Let's see. I just remembered a bunch of shit. I just had a bunch of memories come back from when you were talking about kitchen. So I'm kind of like pulling a blank right this second.
Fine.
I just remember working the kitchen as junior staff, and fucking how that was like the chillest job ever. When you're junior staff, you literally just got to sit in kitchen, and like if you were like friends with most of the family, like kids in every family, like I was towards the end, like just get along. Like everybody would be singing and like we'd be just talking to each other and like cool. Of course, I'd be like supervising them and shit, but you'd literally get to sit in the kitchen, talk to Miss Gloria, and just it was crazy. Miss Gloria was awesome. She was like worked kitchen from like the entire time I was there. Just an old lady, like in her late 70s, and just loved cooking. And just she always used to sing when she was cooking and whatnot. It's just crazy. And then I remembered as junior staff, we'd always, if we were working the family, we'd come in the back of the kitchen, and then we'd like eat in the back, like we'd eat away from everybody. And I just completely forgotten that. It's crazy. And then we'd always like, and then I was remembering too. It's just crazy. A lot of things. A lot of things. Remembering. It's crazy. Did
Yeah,
you?
we did at the kitchen too. We wouldn't eat out with the other kids, and we'd eat after we served everyone. Um, well, we would only feed the girls. Then we would get done. We would eat our stuff, and then we would leave. And then the boy kitchen staff would come in. The boy kitchen workers would come in, and they would serve all the boys. And then they would leave, and we would have to do all the cleanup after all of that. I have no idea if that was some weird sexist thing or if they just because there was the girl side before there was the boy side. I don't know if they just cobbled it on the um just, oh, the boys can come in and serve the boys briefly and we'll just keep the girls doing what they were doing before, you know?
Yeah. I've forgotten about that too. How you had to clean. We always had to clean the kitchen afterwards, so we'd always be like in the kitchen like hella later at night. And then I also remember dish pit. If you were in dish pit, it sucked to be you. Like you literally had everybody would be waiting on you because you were usually like always you were the last person because the dishes would just that's just how the dishes came in. Even if you were on top of it, you still would be everybody would be like hurry up, and so they're waiting on you. And yeah, I remember the dish bit. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Did like would they have whole families working at the kitchen when they worked the kitchen, or would it be individual people?
No, um it would be individual girls. Usually I think it was like 3 or 4 from one group, or if there wasn't enough in one group, sometimes they'd combine groups together. Um,
Wouldn't they? Would they like pick him in the morning and be like, "Hey, you're going to kitchen today," and then you'd be like, you'd line up for kitchen. Would you leave early, like before? You'd be like the first people out of the right.
yeah, we'd have to get up and get our chores done really quick so that we could leave in the morning with enough time to get the breakfast. And the staff we had kitchen staff named Mel, and um, she would be there really early in the morning. So we would show up and there would be like, I think like half an hour, maybe an hour of stuff to do before the other girls would show up. But yeah, when you were doing kitchen duty, you had to do it really fast. Kind of like when you were in seminar and you'd get taken, sometimes we get taken out to sit somewhere where we could do our seminar homework in the morning. We get taken to sit somewhere together and do that. Um,
I remember staying up all night doing my seminar homework just so I could get it done. I remember like using the light from the window to like do my homework, like the
yeah,
very little light that because I remember like sometimes you'd have like because there were these lights on the outside, so after like lights out we'd have like there'd be lights on or they'd actually turn the lights out, but then there'd be like night lights things on the outside of the buildings or whatever. And so if you were closer to that, then you could get a little bit of light off that, and you could just use that little bit of light to do your seminar homework. They had us do hella homework for seminars too, like
yeah.
plus
We
pages front and back.
6 pages, 10 pages front and back.
Yeah, 10 pages
Yeah.
front and back, at least. And then with the later seminars, like principles, you had to do like, you had to write shit in a specific way, and you had to like follow the rules exactly. And if you missed any single one detail, you got chosen out of the seminar. That's the only seminar that I chose out of twice. The rest of them I got through my first time, but fortunately. But yeah, seminars were crazy with the homework.
Yeah, and I feel like that was definitely deliberate. Um, that they were trying to make us more susceptible to their ideology and their mind change by giving us sleep deprivation while we were going through that. I would do my seminar homework. I would turn on the light in the bathroom and then close the bathroom door. And I would get out of my bed. I would lay on the ground in front of the bathroom, and the light coming out under the door was enough that I could see my paper and write with. I definitely was not supposed to do that. And if I had gotten caught, I would have gotten kicked out of seminar, but I felt like it was the only way I could get the homework done. And so the staff would come around and check on us every 15 minutes. So I had to kind of time it and know every 15 minutes I had to put my book away and hide it and then go back into bed and pretend I was laying there asleep when the staff would come in and shine the flashlights and look at us and make sure that we were still there, um, and then leave. And then I could go back to doing my homework again. It took 2 or 3 times as long as it should have because it was being done in this weird in between kind of way like that, trying to get it done. But you got to get it done, or there was no way to get home. Like you had to finish the seminars in order to get home, and you had to do everything the way they wanted it to get through the seminar. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it's crazy. And literally they would require so much of the homework. Like there's no way anybody, I don't care how fast you write, like they would literally ask so, especially in focus, they would ask so much for the homework.
Hmm.
At least that's what I noticed. Like it wouldn't be possible with the amount of time that they gave you because you weren't allowed to do seminar homework when you were in school. You weren't allowed to do like seminar homework. Like you could only do it at specific times during the day. When I was at Spring Creek, like you could not do it at school. Like I did it in school anyways, but you were not supposed to do it in school. You were supposed to be doing schoolwork in school. And
Wait, you could
so
do seminar and school at the same time?
no,
We
no, 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 no. I'm talking about seminar homework.
we didn't have school at the same time we had seminar. Seminar would start at like 9 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning and run until maybe 10 p.m. And it was all day, with
Oh
very
yeah,
minimal
you're right. You're
that kind
right.
of
You're right. You're right. You're right. You're right. I got things mixed up there. You're right. We didn't. No, I was confused. Okay, yeah, because they did run, and then we'd only have the nighttime to do the homework. And see, so even more so that they didn't give us
yeah,
enough time.
yeah,
I'd forgotten about that. Yeah. For some reason, I thought for a second that they like the seminar only lasted half a day, but I remember them being like 3 day. Like we'd come back to the cabin late at night, and then we'd wake up early in the morning and be gone all day. Right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
um
No possible way you're gonna get that homework done because they assign it to you at the end of the night, right?
yeah.
They don't even
And
tell you until the end of the night, right before you're about to go home. You're right. Isn't that how
yeah,
they do it there? Is that they give
they'd
it to
have
you at
pieces
night?
of paper that they would pass out with like the list of the questions that you had to do one page front and back on each of these topics usually, and it would be like, how does this particular phrase that they have relate to your life? So you had to come up with something, and you're not able to just say, well, yeah, that just has nothing to do with how I ended up here. It's like, trying to make it apply. And I knew this, some of that would go back to my parents. So at sometimes I tried to say ridiculous things that I knew my parents would be like, that's too much. Like that's not real. But nothing really came of it.
Yeah, I remember us right after they give us the homework, at least for when I was at Spring Creek, right after we got the homework, we'd be waiting for like the van to like come pick us up from upper facility or whatnot. So we'd have a little bit of time in between, like to start our homework or whatever. I don't think we were supposed to, but then we were supposed to go straight back and go to bed, but usually I did it at night or whatnot. And then I think we'd have a little time in the morning when before the seminar started, right?
Yeah, that's how it was for us too.
Yeah.
And those were run by the same people, the same kind of facilitators who go around to different programs. So there was some continuity of that. Like it was similar whether we went to whichever program, they were similar. I think it varied more based on who the facilitator was, because there was a lot of personality difference between like someone like Dwayne, who was really large and angry and like kind of an aggressive, more drill sergeant kind of an attitude, versus someone like Jan, who was a parent of a kid who had been in the facility, and she was more like manipulative, more like say things that aren't true but that are cruel, or like make more hurting in like a psychological kind of way. She wasn't generally going to get in someone's face and threaten to fight them or something. So sometimes I felt really lucky if it wasn't Dwayne or David Gilcrease was the man who started the seminars. And I went to 2 of his seminars and he was a crazy tyrant. I always felt lucky when it wasn't him or Dwayne. Because those are definitely the worst to me.
How long did your release processes go on for? I swear it went on for like hours during focus. I swear they had us doing it for like 3 hours or something.
Release.
And then this release process where they had you beating the floor, didn't you do that with the towel?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was a long time. Um, like hours. Um, to the point of exhaustion and then past it. Um, and that was scary for me to experience just because I'm overwhelmed by other people with that much emotion being in the room with the carpet on the walls. That's where we had the seminar. Um, with that I know I spent a lot of my time in seminar worried that I was going to do something wrong and get kicked out, which they called choosing out. Like you were saying earlier. Um,
I wonder what it would be like to like go back. I always wanted to go back to the Spring Creek Lodge Academy facility, and I've heard that it's like privately owned and you can't really go to certain parts. But I really want to get into that seminar building and do some ghost paranormal investigation there, because there has got to be some fucked up energy there.
yeah,
There's no way that building like has been untouched, dude. There was so much like psycho emotional energy. Like I'm just thinking about that now. Like, dude, there's got to be some bad juju to that place. Like, completely.
yeah,
Like, I was just thinking about like going back and what it would feel like to like be like walk back into that area, like the seminar room. How crazy that would feel.
seminar for adults and teenagers and people who are not in the program, and I really wanted to go in, attend one of those, and get up and talk about what the place is like and how dangerous they are, and give some idea to the parents of what's going on. But I know it would be really, really triggering for me, and I think I would lose track of what my goals were. And I think I would be way too angry at the facilitator, especially if I recognized them, to the point that I just came off of as angry instead of helping anyone to understand what happened, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you. I actually did an interview the other day, and she's actually in touch with some of the people that still do those seminars for like people or whatever. And so I was actually thinking like I might want to go through a seminar again, but I don't know. I don't know. It's something I'm thinking about. Something I'm thinking about because now that I'm older, I just think it would be a crazy experience. Now that I'm
Yeah,
older, go like through the same thing again, and then like through like my adult mind and like knowing what I know now, like, and I think it would be extremely interesting to see how it would affect me now and how it affected me then. Because back then it was like literally like I was on drugs when I came out. Like
yeah,
it was crazy. Like you literally felt, at least I felt like I was on top of the world.
yeah. And that's one of the things that reminds me a lot to like cults, is because that happens a lot in cults where there's the love bombing and there's all this affection, and it's like, well, if you just are who we want you to be, who you truly are, that um that it's you're really accepted and you're really loved. Um I see it really callously and manipulative on their part to muck with kids' emotions. Um, I think that anything positive anyone gets out of that place is like a really great thing. That it's like turning lemons into lemonade. That it's um like just good that someone's not traumatized by it, you know, that you got something out of it. Um, and it took me a while when I first got out to realize that the things that bothered me might have been helpful for someone else, that everyone has a different experience, and that no one's experience diminishes someone else's. That like I could have had a really terrible time at that in that seminar, and you could have had a really great time and learned something about yourself. Um, and I definitely would rather you have that experience than go away from it with a negative one like I did, you know?
Oh,
Um,
and there was definitely negative experiences. Like the seminars, some of the hardest things I've done, maybe in my entire life, were up there. And there was definitely a bunch of negative stuff to it. But I'm just saying, like the brainwashing worked because when I came out, I felt like I was on top of the world. So whatever the fuck, and what they do literally in a seminar is they break you down. And then I had forgotten to point this out on the last video because I completely spaced it. They break you down, they build you back up into who they want you to be, and then they love bomb the fuck out of you and do all
yeah,
the whole I am statement, and like then you get like at least we got like acknowledgments, and like people would tell us like how we changed their life and like helped them through the seminar. And especially if you were like staffing the seminar, you get even more love bombing, because after you were done staffing, you'd have like a junior staff, like upper level, like whoever was staffing, like love bombing session. So like it was even more love bombing. So I think that whole like recipe is how they do that whole thing. I completely
yeah.
forgot At the love bombing aspect, like towards the end.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's how they tried to get parents to come back for more, and how they it's like the carrot and the stick. If you change who you are to be the new program personality, then this is what you get. And if not, then you get to leave the seminar and spend months more back here, away from your family. Um, but yeah, they definitely had like carrots to try to get you to cooperate and go along with things at our place too. Um, some of them were really silly, like we had reward cookies that the the like level twos would get, and we had like a once a month ice cream sundae thing for level threes. Um, and it got more intense as it went up in levels, what people were allowed to do. Um, and being in a place without a lot of positive reinforcement, like you, at least I got really where I wanted to do the little tiny things that made life more bearable, whether it's get my special reward cookie, or like sometimes they had candy bars, or like um things like that. Um, it's amazing the power that has over you when you're feeling hopeless, and that's the only joy to look forward to for a bit.
Yeah. Did they have like when you're on upper levels? Did they have them working specific jobs? Like, would they have them like helping people in the administration building or anything like that? Like they had that for us, or they'd have designated people that were considered runners or whatever, upper level runners, and they'd go and collect certain people from families to like take them to doctor's appointments or like phone calls or any stuff like that. Did you guys have anything like that?
No, we had we had staff would communicate on like walkie-talkie kind of radios. And they had a code that they used, and like code names for different, like radio 3 was the shift supervisor. And like radio 2 was Carr Farnsworth, the actual program director, and radio 1 was Ron Garrett, the guy who basically ran the day-to-day of the program. Um, we had there was a privilege of taking the trash out at the compound building. They had a like dumpster outside of the facility, and they would take 2 or 3 girls who were trusted and on upper levels, and they would run trash to outside and dump it in the trash can. Um, a couple of girls successfully made it running away, not all the way away, but they made it for a bit by running away when they were taking the trash out. Um, but no, we didn't have a lot of supervision of each other. Um, it was more like we'd have to write, um, they called it a statement of fact. Like if you
Yep.
saw someone doing something, you had to write a statement of fact about it, or like if you thought something was going on or whatever. And if you didn't, you would get in just as much trouble when that person got found out. They would try and figure out who else knew about it, and um,
The
get you in trouble
consequence
for it.
was withholding, I think. You
Yeah.
get withholding. Yeah. It's the
Um,
same consequences they would get.
yeah. If the staff were really mean, they would make it a category 3 therapy refusal. Um, for us. Just depended on what the girl got caught doing. But yeah, if it was like a sexual misconduct, like a category 4 offense, you'd get a cat 4 too. And that's like losing all your levels and privileges, and then spending like 25 or 30 hours in the tape room on Staff Buddy and all that goes along with.
Yeah. I think didn't you have that sheet that you wanted to go over?
Yeah, let me pull it up on my phone. I wanted to talk some about the bite model by Stephen Hassan from the book Combating Cult Mind Control, because a lot of the stuff in here seems like CrossCreek used it as an instruction manual for how to set up a program. So there are 4 basic categories. Um, Behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotion control. So if we want to talk some about behavior control, which is like the most like basic way of controlling people. Um, so things like modify your behavior with rewards and punishments, which is very much like the school. Dictate where and with whom you live. Restrict or control your sexuality. Control your clothing and hairstyle. Regulate what and how much you eat and drink. Deprive you of 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night. Exploit you financially, or in this case, your family. Restrict your leisure time and activities. Require you to seek permission for major decisions. They required us to seek permission to go to the bathroom and to stand up and to cross through a doorway. They took some of these to such an extreme that it goes beyond this. And this is talking about cults and what they do as part of their like brainwashing and like mind control to get people to do what they want. Um, is there something we want to talk about in particular? Some about the 7 to 9 hours of sleep with the seminar. And that was my experience too. We were both sleep deprived for that. Um,
How many? Do you remember? Or what time was lights out?
Ours, it was like 9:30-ish. Um, and then we had like usually like 15 minutes of like that you could be silently doing something, and then it was like time for everything to go off, like everyone to go to sleep and that kind of thing.
What time did they have you wake up in the morning?
Um, like think like 6 o'clock in the morning. I remember it was really early. Um, it changed over the time that I was there, but it would vary. Like girls who were on Staff Buddy would get woken up first and put to bed last. Um, when I was in the isolation room, they would move me after everyone had gone to sleep into the isolation room I'd be sleeping in, and then leave me in there with the bright light on the whole night where I couldn't cover my face or my hands or anything. If you covered your face or your hands, they assumed you were self-inflicting injury. That the only reason why you would want to cover up while you were asleep was so that you could hide how you were hurting yourself with your hands. So you weren't allowed to like cover your eyes in any way with like a blanket or with your hands or with whatever. You just had to deal with the fact that the lights were on all the time. Um, and that was true for everyone I know of in the isolation room. And then when girls would get put on staff buddy, their beds would be put in the hallway so that they had sometimes kicking their bed as they walk by. That was a common thing for night watch to do. If they were annoyed, they had to walk, like count you or deal with you. Would be every 15 minutes or more. When they would walk by, they would just kick your bed to make sure that you couldn't sleep through the night. Um, I was put on a sleep deprivation process couple of times under different circumstances. In one, they didn't tell me what it was, just that every time I would close my eyes or try to go to sleep, the staff would come over and shake me and tell me I needed to move. So they didn't even tell me I wasn't allowed to sleep. So I'd be sitting in the classroom, and if I happened to start dozing off, they would come over and shake me and tell me I needed to move to a different seat. At night, when it was bedtime, I had um, my bed in the hallway, and they come over once I closed my eyes and shake me and tell me I had to move my bed to a different location. And that went on literally all night, like dozens of times throughout the night. Um, I don't remember anything of day 3. I know towards the end of day 2, everything was getting really black. And I don't remember anything at all of day 4 either. It's just that something I said on day 4 made Ron Garrett stop the sleep deprivation. And after that had stopped for a couple of days, I went back up to Ron Garrett and I asked him, I can't remember anything of what we did. What did I agree to do in order to get you to let me out of the sleep deprivation or the process I was just on? Because whatever I agreed to do, I was saying, okay, I'll do that. Even though I can't remember it, obviously I agreed to do something. And he was really miffed that I just couldn't remember it, and he walked off, um like stomped off, never told me what happened or how I managed to get off of that process. um Sometime on day 4, um I don't know how long they would keep a girl on that process if she didn't cooperate in some way, but that was pretty crazy. um And again, something that came from Russian political prisons is not letting the prisoners sleep, um, moving from one cell to another, moving from one area to another, leaving the lights on all night. Um, these are all ideas that came from that eventually. Um,
Okay. Um, I just want to let you know that somebody pulled up and they started bumping their music, so I went to go close my window and I came and sat back down and it stopped recording, so I'm going to have to piece together these 2 videos. And yeah, I will do that, but I'm just letting you know that that happened.
you're
And
having a
but that's fine. I have software I can do that with. And I wanted to point out to people, I wanted to ask to the audience, I have gotten hit up, or 2 people now have hit me up from 2 separate groups. One of them was the Fight Tranquility Bay group, and one of them was I think it was Stop W.W.A.S.P group, and they said that my posts have been dominating the group, so they've then asked me to stop posting in some groups, which I've agreed to, even though, in my opinion, these people are most likely people that haven't even watched any of my videos, are assuming that I'm literally like just because they come at me like it's an advertisement. And it's not an advertisement, it is me updating people that there's a new episode out. And so
yeah.
me, that's people that haven't obviously watched my videos are assuming that I'm just like trying to push my, which I am trying to push my content, but I'm also trying to get the education out there. So I'm trying to ask the audience, like, I need you guys to brainstorm, like, help me come up with ideas that I can gain exposure elsewhere. Like, I'm trying to get the word out there. It's great that it's getting out to all these survivors and whatnot, and I want that to continue happening, but I also want to branch out to the public, the general public, and get the word out there of these schools to the general public and people like that. So I'm asking, I'm trying to branch out for other ways, because usually how I promote my videos is through Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. But I'm trying to
Yeah.
like, I want to brainstorm other ideas to gain exposure as well, because I don't want to, I'm not trying to intrude on people, and I'm not trying to look like they're advertisements, but I do kind of put a lengthy post on each of my videos, but I do include like all the stuff that's attached to my channel in there. So I also wanted to ask the audience, does anybody else feel like I'm dominating groups or anything like that? And if you do feel like that, reach out to me, and I'd like to talk to you, and hopefully we can come to some agreement. If not, we'll just agree to disagree. But I just don't want to feel like I'm intruding on people. I'm just trying to spread a good message here, and I'm just trying to provide a platform for people to share their stories and educate people, so I can hopefully eventually get new laws passed and whatnot. So I just wanted to throw that out there and let people know
And
that.
important. Like we need people to hear about this. We need educators to hear about this. We need people who can write new laws. We need to get the word out, because these kind of abusive facilities hide in the dark. They don't want kids to tell the truth about what happens here. That's the only way that they can continue to operate, is if they can continue to lie about how these facilities work. So, like, it's really important that you get the word out and that more information is out, so people can look at it and look at what the red flags are and think twice before they send their kid to one of these facilities. Like, at some point, we're going to reach the point that awareness is not a problem, but we're not even remotely there yet. Like,
The
we
average
could
person
use a
doesn't know.
10,000 times more awareness.
The average person doesn't even know that these places exist, in my opinion. Like your average person doesn't, and doesn't even think. Most of them don't even think that this could exist,
Yeah.
especially in the United States of America.
Or that it's legal, or that it at least hides behind the laws and regulations that are there. Um, yeah. Um, there's a huge awareness problem. Um, and um as we spread the news to parents, it just becomes other groups that also need to be aware, um, like educators, therapists, people who would have the option to send kids to one of these places need to be aware of what the dangers are and what the long-term effects can be. So it's not just parents deciding not to do that, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Did you let's see. Did they have a graduation ceremony at CrossCreek? Was there graduation? Like, did they have like any crowd surfing? Did they have a thing called Trail of Lights there?
No, maybe. I do remember something about lights. It was
It would have.
kind of like follow people who went before, but um they had a graduation ceremony. We had like caps and gowns like it was high school graduation, and for some of the kids it was um we finished up like all the last bits of our home contract, and everyone like signed it and agreed to it. Um, because we were expected to follow like a lot of the program's rules and ideology when we got home. And some of it basically indefinitely, some of it only for a certain period of time. Um,
So you did have a graduation ceremony. Okay.
yeah,
It's interesting. On our facility, we did this. Essentially, we would have like a trust fall for the person that was graduating, and then they would fall into, and then they'd be lifted up. There'd be like people linking hands on either side, and then they would fall back, and then we'd crowd surf them to the end. And then when they got to the end, like anybody that was close to them or like had something they wanted to say to them before they left, because this was like pretty much the last day they were going to be on the facility. The next day they would be home, like they'd be on a plane home. So you'd get to come up and whisper. They'd be blindfolded during this, and I went through this. And anybody that had something they wanted to say to you, like how you helped them through their program or whatnot, would come and whisper it in your ear right before you graduated. So they didn't have anything like that there? Like a recognition?
I don't think so. Um,
It was probably just a facility thing, like a Spring Creek thing.
I don't remember any kind of trust fall or like crowd surfing or anything like that. I know they did kind of test us in PC2 to make sure we were all willing to walk in line and cooperate with the feisty staff who was telling us to do a bunch of things all one after another. Um, no, I don't recall anything like that.
Okay.
Um,
Did you have anything else you wanted to address? I know you had a couple more points probably on there that you probably wanted to talk about.
yeah, I
There were
got
a
a
lot of
little
things on that list, so.
here. I'm trying to look at see what we've already talked about. And things I wanted to talk about. Cameras. At the facility, they had closed circuit TV cameras all the time. And they were going in all the classrooms and like sometimes like certain group rooms. Um, and we never knew when we would get in trouble because of something that was watched on the camera. And we never learned when things came from cameras, but we would get consequences that we wouldn't hear about when they happened. So we were being like video recorded like around the clock on the cameras, and sometimes they would use stuff that they saw us doing on the camera to get us in trouble after the fact. Um,
I'm not
which
sure. I'm not sure if they had cameras on our facility. I'm gonna have to ask some people that went to Spring Creek, but that's crazy.
I never knew, I still don't know what consequences came from the cameras, how often they had people watching them. Were they like, I'm pretty sure they were recorded on VHS tapes and like, but like, do they exist somewhere? A whole
That's what
bunch.
I was just about to ask. I'd love to get my hands on those tapes. You know,
Yeah,
like just for the information, like that. That could be a mother lode, a treasure
yeah,
trove of information.
yeah.
A lot of fucked up shit, I'm sure, is on there, but I mean,
Um,
it wouldn't be something that I would enjoy doing, you know. But yeah, I think it would
it
be.
would be nice to have proof of some of the things that happen, like when a girl would get taken down for something super minor, like standing up out of her desk and without permission, and the staff would come over and physically throw her to the ground and pull her arm up behind her back until it touched the back of her head, and sometimes lay on her body or her chest or her butt or her like feet area to keep her from getting up. And the girls would scream that they couldn't breathe. Um, they must have recorded so many instances of stuff like that. Um,
Are you sure the cameras were
not-
on? Are you sure they weren't just for show? Do you know for a fact that they were on and recording? That would be my only other question.
One time I saw inside the room that the camera setup, the recording setup was. I saw like the VCRs for where to, because they would play movies sometimes in certain rooms, or emotional growth tapes, or like tapes like Father Martin or like AA, or like sometimes really childish things like this series called You Can Choose that seem to be aimed at 4 to 8 year old kids. Um, but they definitely had them recording. I saw I saw that in that room once, when I was on staff buddy and I was walking past it while staff was working in that room. Um, but I don't know if they rewrote on the same tapes over and over again, because that would be a common thing security would do, or if somewhere just all of these tapes exist. The therapy rooms were also taped. So like the rooms, we'd have supervised phone calls with family members. And when I got trusted a bit more, sometimes the staff would leave the room briefly while we were on the phone with our parents for like 5 minutes or 2 minutes or something, as like a test to see if you would try to convince your parents to take you home when you weren't being actively supervised. And we knew the camera was on and that we would get caught if we said something like that. um and it never was enough time that they were gone that you could have really made a good argument. um they were always really back there really fast. Um,
Plus, they were probably listening on the other end.
yeah, they could have been listening at live. I know before we had the conversation with the family, they would sit us down and tell us that if we said anything that was manipulative or complained at all about the facility, that the phone call would be ended immediately. We would lose all our levels. We would get put in isolation and or tape room, um, and would get in a lot of trouble. But the biggest thing they held over us was the fact that the call would end. And we just wanted generally to talk to our parents and have something positive to bring back into our daily life that maybe we could think about when things weren't so pleasant. um, think back to that phone call and have some hope that going home is going to happen sometime.
Yeah. Have you forgiven your parents? Did I ask you that last time?
I don't think you did. Um, I don't hold it against them. Um, I feel like the people who were the most responsible were the people who ran the place and the people that had the power. I feel like if I'm doling out responsibility, I'm going to dole out 80 or 90% of the responsibility to the people who actually did the abuse and who set up the abuse. Like my parents would never have come up with these ideas if left to their own devices. And I know um, these places are experts at manipulating parents. For all that they said that we were manipulative, they were, I swear to God, 100 or 1,000 times more manipulative with parents. They knew exactly what to say, and they had literally been practicing for decades to get the script just right, to convince parents that if they didn't send their kid there, the kid was going to die. And they literally put it in that terms like many times. And this played into the parents' vulnerabilities. Now, some parents were very aware of what was going on. Most parents were not aware of what was going on, and they just wanted to get their kids help, and they just didn't recognize the warning signs or didn't do something to stop it, or didn't realize the extent of the problem. But I just feel like getting angry at my parents over it is avoiding the people who are 90% responsible for that situation. I think a lot of parents had red flags that they chose to ignore. But with how expert these facilities are at lying to parents, I feel like that's blaming the wrong person. And that's just how I feel. I don't feel like some parents knowingly selected these facilities in order to cover up abuse or crimes, or to manipulate their child, or to hide sexual abuse, even to stop lawsuits that were going on for some really heinous things. And I understand why those kids blame their parents and hold their parents responsible. But I think that's something everyone has to decide, is how much they're going to think the parents were responsible for it, and how much they're going to put the blame on the facility.
Yeah. I feel you. Did I ask you about going back in time and changing and not going there last time? I don't think I asked.
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Okay. Let's see. Do you see any other
We
points?
can talk a little
Yeah.
bit about how vulnerable I was when I first got out of the facility, because I was completely unaware that I was going to be so vulnerable.
What do you mean by vulnerable? Like what context?
I I was looking for love. I was looking for community. I was looking for connection. I was looking for something. I was looking for love bombing. I was looking for a new family, someone who wasn't going to send me away to an awful place. And I ended up moving in with another girl who I'd been friends with at CrossCreek, and it really, really did not end up well for us. She ended up basically trying to start a small cult and
With the same
manipulating
teachings? With the
people.
same kind of teachings?
Some of the same stuff from the facility,
Interesting.
like like absolutely no drugs of any kind. Um, like, she was upset that people would smoke cigarettes, and like, at one point in time, she thought I was smoking weed, which I wasn't. Not that it's a big deal; it's legal a lot of places, but at that time I wasn't. And um, she had this big confrontational thing when I got home from work. Um, I was really tired, and I had drove like 5 hours in horrible weather to get home from work, and she had me up for hours while everyone in the house confronted me, trying to get it out of me what kind of drugs I was taking at work. And I wasn't. Uh, it was exhausting to work an 8-hour shift and then drive 5 hours home in really bad rainstorm that was threatening to turn into a blizzard at any moment. But that's something she definitely got from the facility, because we would have confrontational meetings where someone would get put up in front of everyone, and they would try and figure out what they had done or how they had broken the rules or whatever. Um, And my family knew that I was vulnerable getting out of there, and they tried to warn me, but the pull was so strong in me to try to find some kind of community after I had lost so much of myself and like um my sense of safety and like um I was struggling with a lot of really basic things, like just going to the store and buying basic groceries was really hard. I'd get overwhelmed. Um, and my friend said that she could help with all this and that she had um, special abilities. And I was really vulnerable to that because I was looking for something that would give us like the closeness. And um, I ended up basically going from CrossCreek and then being out for like 9 months maybe, and then moving across the country to move in with her and her little budding cult um, in Pennsylvania.
Were they living together, or were they just like meeting at the house to have meetings? Like, how was this?
It was we were all living together in a house, um, a big old Victorian house, and then we moved to another larger Victorian house. And at one point, we had like 9 people with us, and my friend was counseling people um, over the internet and trying to get people to move in with us. And she was really interested in like old school video games um, and that kind of stuff. And she got more and more controlling over time. And um, I was really vulnerable to that. Um, I wanted family. I felt like I had lost my family. Um, and I think a lot of kids coming out are vulnerable to that. They want that connection. They want to like they want they want to feel better. Um, and it didn't work well for me. Uh, I would definitely recommend against attempting to join a cult if someone leaves a facility like this. Um, I didn't realize it was gonna kind of turn more cultish as time went by. Um,
What
but
kind
it
of
did.
stuff? What kind of stuff was she doing besides like the confrontational stuff? What would she have like just a multitude of rules at the house like that you had to follow, or like how is it? What
Really
made you say
rude,
that it was a cult?
and like a lot of thing relied on her personality and what mood she was in and what she was doing. Um, like they like to go out in a car, as a group, and they would play loud music and like pretend like they were in a video game and they were like out hunting like demons, like that no one could see, like on the side of the road. Um, it got really crazy. Like she got aggressive and violent a couple of times, and her girlfriend um got aggressive a couple of times, and um yeah, I just couldn't handle it.
Yeah,
Um
sorry you had to go through that.
yeah. Um I just hoped that I would have like more connection And before I left the program, me and this girl were not allowed to talk to each other. We were put on silence because we had a lot of interests in common. And the program didn't like that we liked each other. Like, it wasn't even sexual. It just, we were too good of friends and we got put on silence from each other. That was a thing that happened. But like, when I left the facility, they had told me I wasn't allowed to talk to her. I wasn't allowed to contact her or anything like that. And I did. And um, she was really traumatized by what had happened there, but she wasn't able to talk about what had happened there. And I had hoped that we could like kind of try and work it out with each other, like think about what the place was like and tell each other that we didn't deserve it and that kind of thing. And it didn't end up like that at all. She wouldn't talk about it at all. Um,
Was she on drugs? Was she using drugs?
I do we think maybe, but we never found any like drugs directly.
Yeah.
Like we did find a suspicious box of tinfoil in her bathroom when she left, um, which may have been drug related, but um, it may have just been from dyeing hair. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? Um, is there anything else? Is there on that list? I saw hella stuff on that list. There's so much stuff on that list.
Yeah, we
Or
talked
I,
about a lot of it too. Um, I think don't join a cult. um, um, I think it's important if you can to use the tools of your oppressors against them, um, to decide that you're going to take your side in this kind of a thing, that you're not going to take the program side against you. Um, and maybe that's just how I experienced it. Um, but to take every positive thing that I can out of that place and everything that I learned, um, and to try to use it to make my life better. Um, and I realized there was a lot of shitty stuff. Um, but like one time I wrote this letter to my parents that was really short and really heartfelt. And it was just like a 3x5 card talking about how much I hated the place and how I didn't feel safe there and how I thought I was going to die in that hellhole. And um, just sent it like that and mailed it when I knew the staff who was reading the mail wasn't paying a lot of attention. Because some staff would be more thorough in their inspection than others, when they would inspect our outgoing mail. So I made it short and sweet, um, and easy so they wouldn't have to stare at it long. They were supposed to look for addresses, but they were also looking to make sure we didn't say negative things about the facility. And my letter, what do you know, got through against all odds, probably because someone wasn't paying enough attention. And my therapist, the next time we met, I got in a lot of trouble, and he took this post-it note out and he drew a little statue for me, and he wrote Academy Award underneath it, because he made it like all of my really heartfelt, pouring my soul out stuff was just some elaborate manipulation scheme to try to get to go home. And I think he did that because he wanted to let me know that um, no matter what I said, it was just going to be considered manipulation. Like, not, um, sorry, sorry about the chime. Um, but that he thought it would all, he considered like basically all of our feelings, or an attempt to communicate with parents about what was really going on, was, he considered that like manipulation to try to go home. Um, and I kept that Academy Award that he gave me, and I still have it, and I put it aside. And the way I think about it when I look at it now is how afraid he was of my words, that he knew that me telling the truth was so dangerous to him, so dangerous to the facility, that I might sway my parents to actually lose them money, like lose the facility money. Um, and like, I keep that as a reminder that um I have the power to tell the truth and change people's hearts and change people's minds with it. Um so to me, that's one of those, using the tools of my oppressor against them, using the things that he was trying to make me feel hopeless about, um for my good. Um And I think it's really important for other survivors to, as much as they can, take those victories, take who you are as a person, take yourself, and celebrate that, and celebrate the best of who you are, and um not believe when the facility says um that we're worthless or dirty or liars or manipulators or bad kids, um, to just know that we're not those things the facility might have said we were, um, and that it's okay to like the things that you like. Um, it's okay for me to like fantasy stories. It's okay for some kids to listen to rap music. It's okay for people to have their culture, um, because the program tried so hard to take who we were away from us.
Yeah, sense of identity is definitely important.
So let me think of what else we need to talk about. Oh, we were going over the bite model, and we only got partway through that.
Yeah.
So information control is the second step. Um, so that says deliberately withhold and distort information, forbid you from communication with ex-members and critics, restrict access to non-cult sources of information, compartmentalize information into insider versus outsider doctrines, generate and use propaganda extensively, use information gained in confession sessions against you, gaslight you to make you doubt your own memory, require you to report your thoughts, feelings, and activities to superiors, encourage you to spy and report on others' misconduct, often using a buddy system, and then using Big Brother style surveillance methods. And I saw all of these being used. Um, I I'm pretty sure that this kind of stuff would be going on at all of the facilities, like um, controlling what information we have access to, controlling who we can communicate with, um, even to the point of forbidding us from talking to whole categories of people. Like we weren't allowed to contact our principal or our teacher or a pastor or like other members of the community that would be like really normal to talk with, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. And like I understand if they're trying to help a kid and a kid has friends that are not a good influence, I can understand why they want a kid to not talk to their friends. Like, I don't think that's necessarily a good idea, but at least that makes some logical sense to me. But if they're forbidding kids from reading newspapers, listening to the radio, hearing even what's going on, like I was in there during 9/11 and I happened to be on off grounds pass with my family, and I was the only one bringing in news to the kids about what had happened. And because they didn't tell me not to tell the kids what had happened for at least an hour after I had gotten back, at least I got some of the information out about what had happened. Um, so that the kids were aware of what was happening to our country and in the nation. Um, but we had like no access to outside information or things like that. Um, and we were definitely required to report all of our thoughts, feelings, and activities and write reflections at the end of the night about what we learned and what was going on for us and all of that. And write those statements of fact about other kids, um, so that you could get someone in trouble for that. Um,
Yeah, I remember SOF parties.
where like a whole bunch of people would all write them out together.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, there wasn't a lot of secret stuff like that happened at our facility like that. And especially in the groups I was in, I know that more stuff happened in like B group and L group. Because, like, at one point in time, B group got caught making homemade wine in the kitchen. And, like, there was a huge underground romance novel trading scheme that was going on for a while, but none of that was in the groups that I was in. And there was definitely a sense that other girls would turn you in, like, for anything at a moment's notice. And that if you accidentally did something, you might as well just write up the consequence right then because you're gonna get in trouble for it sometime. Someone's going to see you, and if they don't say it now, they would come clean, is what they would they call it, and they'd write out all of the things that they knew and decide that they were going to follow the rules from there on in.
Yeah.
um and that was one of the ways you could get in trouble, um where you would trust someone and they seemed like they were your friend, they were on your side, but you never knew if in the future the brainwashing would get through to them and then they would turn you in for the stuff that you had been doing together.
Yeah.
um so there was a lot of like fear and mistrust, and um you couldn't get through the program without turning other people in. There was just no way to do it. You had to show that you were willing to like believe in the program and do all of the things you had to do. Um, so do we want to go on to thought control?
Yeah, move on to thought control.
Okay. Thought control. Teach you to internalize group doctrine truth. Instill black versus white, us versus them, good versus evil thinking. In CrossCreek, they called that working versus non-working. And they said basically there was no such thing as good or bad. There was only things that were working or things that were non-working. And if they were working, they would create positive effects in your life. And if they were non-working, they would cause negative effects in your life. But working would get translated to basically anything the program liked. And then non-working would be anything that the program didn't like. So they said, change your identity, possibly even your name. In focus, they did give us like, you had to come up with it yourself. They call it like
I am.
your new number. Do they call it that for you?
Was it where you came up with like I'm an empathetic, loving, handsome, and powerful young man? Is that what?
No, that's the I am statement, but that's similar to that. Yeah, that is. No, like I had mine was Dr. Doolittle. Like it was like first you're running your number now, which is you the way you are without the program, which is negative. And I don't remember exactly what they said. It was something like I'm smarter than you or something like that. And then you had your new number, which was supposed to be like what you are now, like the new personality, like the after the program personality.
I'd forgotten about that. Holy crap! I forgot. I remember now. It's crazy.
Um, use loaded language and cliches to stop critical or complex thought. And man, did they do that all the time. Like they'd have words up on a blackboard with their definition and uh, like engineered to make you change your brain to think in the program kind of way.
Like the sayings they would have on the wall in the seminar.
Yeah, like the sayings like based on results, you have what you intended. This is a statement they came up with, and it's the way that they tried to say that I was responsible for being sad that my grandmother died, because if I had wanted her alive more, she would still be there, because people only die because people that care about them don't do enough, basically. And these kind of um cliches and like they're like thought stopping exercises. It's not, it goes nowhere in the thoughts other than to just blame the child for anything that goes wrong. Um,
The only one I kind of agree with is there's no accidents. Because I kind of believe, I understand that there are accidents, okay? But in the sense that they're saying it like everything happens for a reason type thing. Not that you're
mhm.
at fault for it, but everything does happen for a reason. I kind of believe. I kind of believe that.
Yeah,
Like
I
you're
think
supposed to.
they're positive that someone could get out of thinking to themselves, like maybe like what part did I play or what can I do in the future to change it. But the way that the program treated it when I was there was very extreme. They literally said that if you had a meteor land on you, that you were responsible for it, accountable for it, because you chose to be in that spot that the meteor was going to land.
Yeah,
And
I don't
there's
agree
no
with that
way
at
for
all.
someone to know at a time that this area is like a meteor hazard zone. And they use this as a way to say that girls were responsible for being raped or molested, that the victim of a crime was somehow responsible and wanted it before it happened, even with other smaller things like robbery um, or like assault, or like if kids got into a fight. And like, I think it might be helpful for someone on an individual level to ask themselves, like, especially if they keep having the same problem over and over again. Like, I keep losing friends, as just a random example. This isn't true, but like, if I kept losing like all of my friends every time I had a conversation about my love of cheese, for example, well, maybe I need to look at myself and think about who wants to have a conversation about cheese, and whether there's something about the cheese conversation losing my friends. If it keeps happening over and over again, um, I think that could be helpful for someone to learn or to look at for themselves, but it's completely different when it's being forced on them by someone who has like power and authority, where they have to come up with some way that it must apply in their life. And definitely, like, there's no way I could have won in that situation, because we took really good care of my grandmother, and she managed to live 8 years longer than the doctor said she was going to. They literally expect her to die like 2 or 3 weeks after her husband died. They said this is what commonly happens. And because we took really, really good care of her, she lived 8 more years. She bonded with me. We were really close. And it really hurt me a lot when she passed away, and I was still sad. That was about a year before I entered the program. I was still sad about that. But being made to write a 1-page front and back essay about how, based on results, I must have wanted my grandmother to be dead. It's just painful in a way that's hard to explain unless you've been through it. It was soul crushing. And not just to have someone tell me that to my face, which they definitely did, but to have to come up with reasons why it was true. And if I couldn't do it fast enough, to know that I would probably get kicked out of seminar for not writing this essay good enough or fast enough. And knowing that if I wrote the wrong thing in the essay, the people who read our essays would put us up in front of the group, stand us up on a chair, and yell at us, and have the facilitator and sometimes more than a dozen people from the seminar yell at us about how we don't want to go home, or we don't want good things in our life, and how we have a victim mentality, and how based on results we want to get kicked out of the seminar.
I definitely don't
And
agree with those. I definitely don't agree with that.
yeah,
It's not.
I think that's the difference between something that someone thinks about on their own versus something that someone forces them to think about. You know what I mean? And I don't think it's bad if you sat down with those thoughts, um and you thought, I created some shitty situations in my life. Maybe I should do things differently and not create that situation again. Um and I'm glad you could think about that. I just don't think they should have been forcing that on kids, and definitely not on everyone.
Definitely not. The whole I feel like it would be completely different to go through a seminar now, choose
Mhm.
to do it, as opposed to being forced. There's a complete difference there. You know what I mean? Because when you're choosing, you can choose to leave. You're not underage. They don't have full control of you. So there's a huge difference between
Yeah.
choosing that and making that active choice that I want to go through this, and I'm gonna, just go with whatever gets thrown at me because I'm choosing to do it, against, oh, I'm not being given a choice. This is what you have to do. And so it forces a sort of like robotic almost like response where you have to do what they're saying in order to get through the program.
Yeah.
You have to.
And the only way to get freedom or hope or real life back is to get through it and to get through the program and to agree with them.
Yeah.
And they stole almost all of the stuff from the seminars from a company called LifeSpring. So they do other seminars that are almost exactly the same. And David Gilcrease, who owns Resource Realizations, the company that does the seminars, he got that idea from working for LifeSpring before he started Resource Realizations. So it's not even an idea that he came up with by himself.
Not no idea.
It's a bunch of stolen ideas.
Now, did they add processes of their own in there? Do you know if they added their own processes? Because I would be curious to know what was actually from LifeSpring and what they might have added.
A lot of the stuff, like the Red Black game, Lifeboat, like almost all of the big events all came from LifeSpring seminars. And you can go online and look at like details of people describing what goes on in those too. And I think the LifeSpring seminars came from a small kind of culty thing in Big Sur, California called Essalon, which was like a live-in planned community in that area that the troubled teen industry got some of their ideas, like brainwashing style ideas came from that.
Okay, that's interesting. I did not know that.
Some of that stuff came from Synanon, which was another kind of culty group. It was kind of like a addiction survival group, and that's from that came there. A lot of those came from returning POWs from the Korean War, who had experienced some of these things in POW camps and brought their memories and that kind of thing back with them. And some of them started like abusive facilities. Okay, we're on thought control. So induce hypnotic or trance states to indoctrinate. Teach thought-stopping techniques to prevent critical thoughts and reality testing. Allow only positive thoughts. Use excessive meditation, singing prayer, and chanting to block thoughts. And reject rational analysis, critical thinking, and constructive criticism. So whenever I complained about anything or like tried to question anything with the program, they would always say I was being in my head, like not as opposed to like in my heart, like coming from my heart. Like anytime I would analyze what the things they were saying or try to question if it was true or that kind of thing, they had a lot of like thought stopping techniques. They would use their like little group sayings and that kind of thing.
That's
and then
yeah. That was in thought control, right?
yeah, that's the last one in thought control. And then we have emotional control. Install irrational fears of questioning or leaving the group. And they did that a lot for CrossCreek. They told us if we left, we would end up prostitutes or dead. That without the group, we were definitely going to be dead. If we hadn't been sent to the facility, we were going to die somehow, because of the things that we had been doing at home. And they told this to kids regardless of how severe their situation was. For example, one girl came in with track marks, and she had been mainlining probably something like heroin, and she had like been really into drugs. And at the time I thought, well, obviously that she's the one, like she's a great example of someone who might end up dead. But statistically, I think it was like less than 4% of people who are active IV heroin users will die in any particular year. So um you still got 96% of people who are doing that who are not going to die. So that to me was like one of the most egregious cases of someone doing something really dangerous to herself. Um, and even still, there was a 96% chance that she was going to die in any year. But the program definitely made it out like it was the other way. Like if we hadn't have been sent there, we were definitely on our way towards dying.
Yeah.
And like a lot of things kids were sent there for were not really serious. Maybe fighting with their parents, or maybe some of them just got sent there because they were functionally more like an adult than their parents were comfortable with. One of the girls in my group had a full-time job and a boyfriend and had graduated high school like 2 years early and moved out into her own apartment, and this kind of scared her parents, and her parents like went and kidnapped her 4 months before she was an adult and brought her to the facility and told her she was going to die if she hadn't have gotten their help. Like she wasn't going to die. Like she was just going to go on with her life and date her boyfriend and live in her apartment and have a pretty normal American life. Like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier about love bombing, and that's the next one in emotional control. Make you feel elitist and special, um, or loved. Um, they did that in seminar and some other group activities sometimes. Um, Promote feelings of guilt, shame, and unworthiness. Um, they wouldn't have called it that, but very much so. They made girls feel guilty for being raped, that made them feel accountable or responsible, made people um, made people feel guilty for breaking very simple rules or messing something up that's very simple. I mean, you could get kicked out of a seminar for leaving one hair in the wrong location. Um, like that simple of basic rules. Um, Elicit extreme emotional highs and lows, which would also be my description of a seminar. Um, really emotionally happy and then sad. Label some emotions as evil, worldly, sinful, or wrong. Um, Teach emotion stopping techniques to prevent anger or homesickness. Threaten and harass your friends and family. Um, and I would say, especially friends there, that they had the power to um, control every bit of their lives, like whether they went into the isolation room or not, how long they were going to be there. And that could be for literally anything or for literally nothing. Um, my friend who was sent there for having a boyfriend in an apartment. At one time, she got in trouble because she had never been given any Category 2 consequences. Like, so basically getting in trouble for not getting in trouble. Um, it it was impossible to not get in trouble. Um, and it was hard to see them threaten or abuse your friends, to see them sit on a girl, to hear your friend screaming that she can't breathe while a 300 and some pound staff member is jumping up and down on her back like she's a trampoline. Or um, sometimes they would give all the consequences one girl would get to another girl. Like if a girl didn't care that she was getting in a lot of trouble, they would make her buddies with her friend where they had to stay close to her all the time. And then they would give her friend all of the consequences that she was going to get. So that even if she didn't care that she was getting in trouble, she might care that her friend is having to go into the tape room or be on staff buddy or be punished.
So the animosity, they might get their ass beat for that or something. You know what I mean? Like I can see somebody, especially on the boys' side, if you started getting somebody consequences that was trying to work their program, somebody's
Yeah,
not looking, dude, you can get socked up or something. They'll punch
and
you.
they
They'll punch you up. I've seen that. I've seen that happen to some people.
call that positive peer pressure, like that peers were supposed to be exerting some sort of influence on each other to try to make them do what they said was the right thing, but it wasn't always the right thing. It was just what they thought was right.
Yeah, it essentially teaches you how to snitch on people.
Yeah, and that if you don't, um, you're gonna get in a lot more trouble than before. Um, that's one of the things they really worked hard on, was to break apart our solidarity and our um, trying to help each other out, our trying to like support each other and cover for each other and that kind of thing. Because you could get in a lot of trouble for it. Um,
Yeah. It's essentially gaslighting. You're just gaslighting them.
yeah,
Telling them that it's good, you're doing somebody a favor when you're really not. I mean,
yeah,
there's a few, I'm sure there's a few times when that would have been rang true, but generally, no. You might have
yeah,
been, you might be helping somebody, I mean, in the long shot, there will be one person that you might help, but then the rest of them are just going to be, you're not helping them. You're just fucking them over, and they're going to have to stay longer in the program.
yeah, yeah. And part of their goal was to have kids stay as long as possible, because the longer someone stayed, the more money they could get out of the family, because they were paying by the month. Um,
But you had to consequence. You couldn't just not consequence either, so you had to do it. You
yeah,
fuck, you had to do that in order to graduate. There wasn't a choice. But
yeah,
what I realized is that I could choose how I did it. I had to do it regardless, but I chose how I did it. So I went about it like coaching people, and like I would yell the consequences out just to be vocal and show up. But I wouldn't, at the end of the day, I would just coach them and be like, hey, you weren't supposed to be, passing notes, or you really know you weren't supposed to be walking out of bounds, right? And then if
yeah,
they say yeah and acknowledge it, that's the same thing as writing a fucking accountability form. That if you would just acknowledge it verbally, why the hell do I have to give you the consequence? If you just acknowledge verbally that you did it, I'm not going to do it again. Or, the only time I'd really consequence people is if they were being directly disrespectful to me, a staff member, or another student. Because I didn't,
yeah.
that's something, that's where I felt like the rules actually came kind of in handy, is if people were getting bullied. But there weren't many people doing what I was doing and coaching the people. There was a lot of people that were abusing their power and doing the bullying, but I'm just saying that, like, sometimes the rules, like, I agreed with some of the rules, like not bullying, that stuff, that kind of stuff. But overall, I don't agree with the majority of the rules, no. Because in a place like this, you have to have rules. In a facility like this, you have to have rules. There has to, or else there's just going to be anarchy, you know what I mean? So there has to be certain rules, but there doesn't have to be rules against everything, in my opinion. You know what I mean? And a lot of them just didn't make sense, but a lot of them are kind of just basic common sense. Like, don't bully people, don't beat people up, no fighting. And there's some safety ones too, I'm sure, but the majority of them are just nitpicky bullshit, just to make you stay there as long as possible.
Like how you have to stand in line and like have to do things like that, or I know we had rules about how we stood in line, but ours were relatively lax compared to the other facilities. Like girls at CASA had to like walk in line like very, very close to the person behind them, like in lockstep, like almost like marching. But we just had a thing where you had to be like so close to the person in front of you, and you had to be silent, and you had to um face the right direction and that kind of thing. And then turn and face the wall when the boys walked by. But we didn't have rules. Like CASA had rules about like you have to look straight in front of you. You can't like look off to the side and see what's happening. You had to like stand um almost like a military formation, and walk like that.
You couldn't look out of line at Spring Creek either. You would get a what did they call that consequence? Not out of area, but they would be unsat line. They would be like unsatisfactory line. So you had to look straight, you had to stop heel toe, and you had to walk in sync with the person in front of you.
Yeah.
That's how it was at Spring Creek. And they would watch. They would watch your feet and be like, not in sync, self-correct. Like, just lagging behind, they'd be like, self-correct, you're not in sync. Staff corrected. Yeah, it's just like, why do we need, the whole thing, I get it, because it's obedience. It all crumbles down to obedience at the bottom level, the very basic level of why they're doing that. But it's like, it's fucked up that we have to walk in sync. But that's just to show that, to institutionalize us and that whole control thing, and like.
And it didn't matter in CrossCreek what was going on when the person was in line. It didn't matter if someone had just been really traumatized or was kicked out of seminar or got back from individual therapy where they were talking about something really sad, or if they were actively having flashbacks like in front of you, or no matter what was wrong, it was always you had to be on silence in the line. And those rules were applied in times where it wasn't really needed. And when I saw that it was strict and that kind of thing in the parent rule book, I never thought that that would be a situation where one of my friends is crying, thinking about when she was raped. And not only am I not allowed to touch her for more than 3 seconds, to put a hand on her shoulder, or to pat her back, or to touch her hair, or to give her a hug for more than 3 seconds, but I'm not even allowed to speak words to her or to give her a sympathetic look. And it's like, okay, now we're going to all stand in line and be in silence and be counted for 45 minutes. I never thought of how emotionally damaging that would be for people. And that kind of thing happened all the time. Girls would come back from therapy and they'd always been talking about how something terrible that happened was their fault. And they would be really upset about it. And they would be on silence in line. And they would be on silence and in Medline. They would be on silence in school. We were on silence like 23 hours a day or more sometimes. And that's without even being in isolation or staff buddy or in the tape room or things like that. And it was just really emotionally devastating to watch my friends go through it, to have to stand there and do nothing. What, even when doing something would be as simple as giving a hug or a sympathetic look. And I mean, if you talked to someone who was on staff buddy and you didn't know they were on staff buddy, it was still a category 2 infraction. So you'd spend 5 to 8 hours in the tape room just because you said hi, Jess, or whatever to someone that you were walking by, or because you tried to get their attention or waved, or you even made eye contact with someone. And if the person was on silence for like a process or like from their therapist, you could get a category 3 for talking to them, like therapy refusal, um, or however they wanted to write it up. And that's like 50 tape credits. So, like at least 15 hours um, in the tape room. Um, Probably usually 3 days if everything went good, or if it didn't. um I never thought there would be these monumental consequences for the most basic human and even mammal things that we take for granted now.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. Totally agree. So that was on, what were we on?
Emotional control.
Thought so.
um Shun you if you disobey or disbelieve, and teach that there is no happiness or fulfillment outside the group. And they did that, the no happiness outside of learning their beliefs and stuff, a lot. Um, they told us that their way was the only way, that our way got us in trouble. Doing things our way was gonna get you killed. Um, that if you leave, you're just going to go out and be a prostitute, that that's the only hope that girls had. Um, like losing hope of going home, of like getting back out into the real world. Um, because they've got to do that in your mind to try to convince you to want to cooperate, not just um go along with what they say. They wanted us to be programized and be program robots and just do everything the way they wanted us to do. Um, Regardless of how ridiculous or bad of an idea it was.
Yeah. No, they definitely did that. They definitely did that. All the time.
I just feel like with this whole list of every single one of them, like more than 80% of these things I've seen on all 4 of these categories. And that's really scary to think about, everyone going through so much mind control and so much cult related manipulation and like gaslighting and um trying to steal who we were.
Yeah, I think everything on that list pretty much was in the program, essentially. I think there might have been a few things, definitely a few of the minor, like the descriptions that weren't relevant, but overall, yeah, the topics for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy
Um
how much is fucking from that. It's crazy.
yeah. Um it really does seem like someone got that list and just used it like as a how-to guide, or just like directed the program around all of these theories of and bad ideas. Like these aren't good things for people to be doing, you know. There's a reason this is in the cult mind control list, not in the like funny fuzzy bunnies fun things to do with children list or something like that.
Yeah.
Um
And you got that list from the archipelago, or the is it the same one you mentioned earlier? Same book?
this bike model comes from Stephen Hassan's book Combating Cult Mind Control. Um and it's available online in graphics, like pictures, where people go through and talk about it some. um and I just pull up the like diagram list of what it talks about. um they go into more detail about every one of these, and I was just surprised how much these plays had in common with cults, and that they use so much like high control activities and like mindset. Um, and Ron Garrett was very open about saying that our brains were dirty and they needed a little brainwashing, and that he didn't try to hide it at all. He just straight up said that that was what they were doing.
I
Um,
wonder if any if like Cameron or Chafin or any of the people that own these facilities, if they've ever gone through these seminars. Have they gone through these seminars? Have they taken the Kool-Aid?
Sometimes they do, but it's going to be a parent style seminar, not a child style seminar.
Yeah, you're
Um, so it's not going to be as confrontational and telling people um, that who they are is bad or unworthy or causes death or anything like that. Um,
yeah,
it's
you're right.
it's really different experience. If they were as aggressive with parents as they were with us, 85% of them would just immediately walk out of the room. Um,
Yeah. You're right, you're right. You're hella right.
I mean, what parent is going to put up with being told they are somehow accountable for being raped? Like, I
Yeah.
just don't think something someone's going to like really internalize easily. And they That's definitely how they treated us in seminar, was that whatever happened to someone, we were supposed to be accountable for it.
It is. That's how the seminars were, unfortunately.
I don't think we talked last time about why I think we have a PTSD rate higher than soldiers, did we?
I don't think so.
So I'm pretty sure, at least the facility I was at, that it has a PTSD rate higher than combat veterans and war.
I've heard
And
that statistic. I've actually heard that statistic.
the way I tried to calculate that was to try to calculate how many kids I would have reasonably interacted with while I was there, and then to try to calculate how many of them I knew had PTSD or admitted on their page that they had PTSD from the place. And it, even if none of the kids that I could track down, that I couldn't track down, had PTSD, it was definitely higher than the general rate among soldiers. And I'm not saying that what we went through was worse than going through a combat situation. I'm saying that we were way less prepared than soldiers were. So, starting off with age, the youngest that a person could be to be a soldier in the US military is 17. Hold on a sec. Beeping. The oldest a person could be to be a soldier in the US military, sorry, the youngest a person could be to be a soldier in the US military is 17. The youngest girl I saw at CrossCreek was 12, and the youngest girl I heard of being in one of these facilities was 7, in a WASP facility. There was a special WASP facility that catered to children under 13. And the difference in brain between development between torturing or abusing or threatening someone who is an adult or close to an adult versus hurting someone who is not yet that mature is a huge difference in like the likelihood that someone's going to be traumatized and um that they're going to end up with PTSD. um And then also the training, because soldiers go through special training to help them prepare in case they are captured by the enemy. There's a special training that's even more intense called survival, escape, rescue, something else, SERE, training that some soldiers go through if they think they might end up in a POW camp or they might be tortured. And it exposes them to some of the basic psychological pressure methods that they might go through and lets them experience them in a minor way before they go into a battle where they might be actually kidnapped and abused more seriously. And they give them methods of thinking about it. They give them techniques for how to deal with abuse and pain and how to go through it. And absolutely none of us going into a facility had any kind of training like that, any preparation to um to be psychologically abused or pressured or to be experiencing these kind of negative things. Um,
Not only that, we
so
didn't
we were
even
just,
know what to expect.
yeah,
Most of us. Or we were gaslit and we were told what we could expect, and then the complete opposite happened.
yeah,
So there's no way we could be ready for it.
yeah. And then the other thing is family support, because soul and support of their friends and fellow soldiers and that kind of thing. And generally, people aren't going to come back from a POW experience and find that their family is angry that they didn't learn anything out of it, or that it wasn't no one's expecting them to get something positive out of being a POW. And there's problems with people not understanding what they went through, but there's no expectation that they're going to be grateful for being in a POW camp, or that it's supposed to have saved their life, or things like that. And that's what a lot of kids come back to, is family that has no concept of the fact that they've been traumatized, that has no way to handle it, that may have just spent hundreds of thousands of dollars paying for this trauma. And there's just not remotely the kind of support that soldiers could get from their families, their fellow soldiers. And I'm not saying that everything works perfectly for support for them either. I'm saying that a lot of us came back to absolutely none of that. And even to parents who had no concept of why we would be traumatized, of what happened back there, and sometimes angry that we're not grateful for being sent there. Um, and that is just soul crushing, to come back from a terrible experience and to try to be making sense out of it, and to have so many people expect you to be grateful for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fucked up. You have to go through the abuse, and then you have to act like you you have to be thankful for it.
Yeah. And it took my family years to recognize that something terrible must have happened, because I was having these panic attacks and these irrational terror over things that would make me feel unsafe or remind me of the facility in some way. And um, parents, once they've believed the facility and they've put their trust in there and spent so much money supporting it, it's very hard for parents to realize that they've made a mistake. Like, psychologically hard for them to make that jump. And it would be a lot better for kids if parents could be supportive faster, if parents would realize they've made a terrible mistake. But the emotional pressure and to not realize that they might have done something really bad is really strong. Um, it's really hard for a lot of parents to realize that the people they trusted the most were the abusers of their child, and that the things that they did to try to help were actually hurtful.
Yeah.
Like,
A lot of them don't want to admit it either.
and the more they think of themselves as good people before it started, the harder psychologically it is to admit that they may have made some kind of mistake like that. Um, because they don't see themselves as the kind of person who would hurt their child. And that denial can break up families, can hurt kids longer, can really mess things up. Um,
For sure. Yeah, it can. It really can. It can mess up the dynamic a lot.
yeah. And so distrust. Um, and this is supposed to be one of the goals of these facilities, is to bring families together. But I've seen so many families ripped apart because parents can't admit to what happened, or can't face the fact of what these places are like, or won't admit up to the trouble that they caused or how they participated in it. Um, which is really sad. When one of the goals a lot of parents have is to have their family stay together. And this place is pushing the other way.
Yeah. Yeah, it is.
So, trying to think if there's anything more I want to talk about.
Thank you for writing it down, though. That's awesome that you wrote it down. That probably helped.
If not, my brain's all over the place.
Yeah. I gotta write stuff down too.
So, you saw a little bit earlier, I had my service dog on the chair next to me.
Yeah.
And she has done a ton to make me feel safer. And one of the things I can really suggest to survivors is if you have an emotional support animal that can help, if you can get a specially trained PTSD dog or train your own service animal. There's a book I recommend. It's called Teamwork 2. Teamwork 1 talks about like general obedience, and Teamwork 2 is specifically about like the service dog work that dogs can do. And I like it because the author is very, very disabled. So he is so disabled that he is wheelchair bound and he can only move one of his hands just a tiny little bit. So he trains service dogs to a really high level of obedience. Just, and the whole book is full of instructions on and suggestions on how to accommodate people's disability. I think a lot of people who could use a service dog definitely can't afford to buy one that's already trained. And some people are overwhelmed by the fact that their disabilities interfere with the ability to train a dog. And in almost every instance, that doesn't have to be the case with some creativity. Like at some point, the man who wrote the book was having to train with dropping treats for the dog. So he had to hire someone to come and help him. And that person's job was to put a dog treat in his hand so that he was prepared. And when the dog did what he wanted, he could be the one to drop the treat so that he's the one training the dog. He's the one teaching the dog to do what he wants. And there's so much safe feeling that no one is going to wake me up in the middle of the night and attempt to take me off to a facility when I have a pit bull sleeping in my room with me. Like, she would be very, very angry if someone came in and tried and scared me and tried to take me away. And even though I know it's not a thing that should be able to happen because I'm legally an adult and they're not supposed to be able to take adults to these sort of facilities, the fact that they actually did kidnap me when I was 18 years old and tried to leave and they wouldn't let me leave just makes it hard for my brain to recognize that they're not going to do it now because I'm an adult, because they didn't respect that earlier when I was an adult. But having the service dog does so much to help me feel safe and secure. And there's a lot of things that I trained her to do that help with that too. Um, So I have a really bad peanut allergy, and I'm worried that I might eat something with peanuts in it and have a reaction. And so she sniffs peanuts for me, and she can tell me when I'm getting close to a peanut. The closer I get to putting it in my mouth, the more enthusiastic she gets about telling me that that's a peanut. So I would have never guessed before I started training her that I could train her to warn me more and more the closer I got to eating it. And there's a lot of things like that that you can train a dog to do. If you don't feel safe in your house and you think that there might be an intruder or there might be someone who might come and attack you, especially after night in the dark, there's a routine that they suggest for that, where you train the dog to do a like a rotation of the house and to go through each area and check for intruders. And you're not legally allowed to train the dog to attack someone, but you can train the dog to go around to different sections, look for the intruder, and when they find the intruder, to just sit there and wait with the intruder. So if you're worried that there might be an intruder in your house, you can send the dog on the loop to check for intruders. And when the dog comes back and sits with you, you know the whole area is safe. There's no one strange. And if the dog doesn't show back up in 10 minutes or something, you know you got to go look for the intruder, because the dog's going to be there watching, guarding that person. And there's a lot of stuff like that that having a service dog can help with. Um, it also helps to go, to me, to feel more comfortable in public. It helps so much to go from positive experience to positive experience with random strangers in public, to feel more safe, to not think that I might get attacked or get feedback from some random person I meet in public, and to just feel more safe because I'm there and Celestia's there, and we didn't have dogs in CrossCreek. We didn't have animals of any kind. And by that, I mean that I very occasionally saw some bees in the yard. That's as close as we got to seeing animals. There was a donkey in the pasture across the road that we weren't allowed to look at. But because my program didn't have animals in them, um, that means that having animals around makes me feel more safe and like I'm definitely not in the facility. Now, that might be different for someone who went to a program that had horses, for example, and had to muck a bunch of stalls. Maybe they don't feel safer just because a horse is around or something like that. But having a dog around helped me a lot to get out there in public and to not have as much negative experiences, not to get so scared in public. And you can even train the dog specifically to interrupt PTSD episodes. For example, like licking the face. You can train the dog to know that these kind of symptoms are that you're having flashbacks or sadness, or you're thinking about the facility, and the dog can be trained to come up and like bump you and distract you and try to get you to pet it. um, that kind of stuff um, is really helpful to not get stuck in negative memories about the place, especially for people who have really bad like flashbacks and that kind of thing. Um, it's hard to stay disassociating when a friendly dog crawls up on your lap and starts licking your face and begging for a little bit of love. And a lot of these things are really easy to teach a dog to do. It just requires some like consistency and um, treating it the same and doing like training.
Yeah, cats also are really good. I actually have a kitten, and she just came over right now. See, she's always over here. But I have a kitten, for example, that has saved my life. Kittens can be really loving. Cats can be really loving too.
Mhm.
Most animals can be loving. You just give them a chance. But dogs in general are a lot more trainable, in my opinion, than cats.
Yeah,
You can still train a cat, but not as to do as many things. I feel like that you can train a dog to do.
yeah. And I've had a cat before who absolutely hated crying. And if you started crying, she would crawl up on your lap and she would like bap at your throat and at your face. And she would beg for your attention and beg for you to stop. So it's not impossible that a cat can help too.
Yeah.
Um, and if you live in a place that doesn't allow pets, they are required to allow an emotional support animal. And those don't have the same rights to go in public like a service dog, but they do have the rights to be in your house, and you can't be charged extra for having them. Like if they have a pet deposit or like a pet fee, they can't charge you that. Um, but it's even stronger if you have a service dog because that gets treated like a wheelchair. It's durable medical equipment. So as long as the dog is not misbehaving or causing a problem, you have a right to take it virtually everywhere. Like the list of places you can't take it is very, very short. I can't take a service dog into the ICU room in the hospital. I can go into almost any other part of the hospital, but the ICU is just way too like safe for secure and germ free and like a lot of attention. It's just not safe. um I can't take her to a place that has live animal shows, and that's mostly because she will disrupt the animal that's doing the show because usually they're not used to having an audience that includes some other kind of animal. So it's pretty disruptive. It's not a good idea to take a service dog to uh like SeaWorld or somewhere like that and then watch a live animal show. But oh yeah, you can't take her into the pool. Like I can't take her swimming with me in a public pool. But that's basically it as far as where I can't take her. Um, as long as she's behaving and not causing a disruption. I mean, I've taken her to a concert. I've taken her into a bar with live performance. Um, I've taken her to almost every restaurant around. Um, and she um, really helps me to be able to do more and to get used to things that I used to enjoy doing before the program. Um, And if there's any way to get a service dog or to train your own service dog, I would recommend that for almost anyone. Um, as long as you have the facilities to support that. Um, like one of my friends um has narcolepsy, and she could really use a service dog that would alert her when she's going to have an attack so that she could lay down before she's falling down. But because she can't get out consistently all the time, it might not work for her to have a service dog because the dog needs to go outside and go to the bathroom and that kind of thing, and she might not be able to do that. But um service dogs come in all sizes and colors and breeds. Um, I I trained a pit bull, which I would say is about 3 or 4 times as hard as training a dog like a golden retriever, just because she has a lot of instincts that I had to work on. but there definitely is a lot of safety feeling from having a larger dog that can be intimidating to some people.
That's understandable.
Hmm?
I said that's understandable.
Yeah. But if someone wants a smaller dog and they only have room for a smaller dog, like I know a friend who trained a Chihuahua to be her service dog, and she needed um alerts for when she was having a panic attack and like blood sugar alerts and things like that. And just because the dog is small doesn't affect their ability to sniff or do anything like that. That dog can do everything that she needed it to do. Um, so uh,
Yeah. Are you still there?
yeah,
Okay. Your thingy's just frozen. It froze up.
sorry. Well,
You're good.
is it better?
Uh, it's still frozen.
Oh. It doesn't seem like it's frozen here.
Yeah, it's just. Oh, there you go. There you go. There you go. There you go. Now it's back. Now it's back.
Okay.
Now it's back.
I have one more suggestion for other survivors.
Okay.
Um, certain jobs provide really good health insurance. And if you have complex medical needs, that can make a huge difference in how well you do. And you might want to look for a job specifically based on how good their health insurance is. Because I know a lot of people have complex medical needs from the facility. Some people have, like, on the mental health side of things, problems. And some people, like a lot of girls from my facility, have um, autoimmune problems and um, other problems that we think might be related to some of the nuclear testing that took place near our facility. Um, because where CrossCreek Manor is actually downwind from some of the big nuclear testing facilities in Nevada. So when they were doing nuclear testing, we were all in that kind of fallout area. So girls who have those kind of problems, it can make a huge difference whether they have a job with excellent health insurance or mediocre health insurance. And I just wanted people to know that if they're having problems getting medical care, that it's worth continuing to try, that it's worth fighting for, and that you can pick a job or an employer specifically to get the health care that you need. Um, and some places are better at that than others. Um,
Okay. That's good information.
I think that's everything.
Okay. Well, it's been. It was awesome having you back on. Thank you so much for writing everything down because I think that really helped. I think this would have been pretty complex if you hadn't written it down. We would
Yeah.
have been all over the place. We kind of already still were, but I think it was a
Yeah.
lot more structured than it could have been. So
Yeah,
thank you.
that's one of the things I struggle with the most with trying to tell my story is to try to put it into some kind of a cohesive narrative or chronological order. And thinking about that place feels like being in a hurricane and having pieces of debris, which are memories, hit me all the time, like flashes of remembering. It doesn't come to me always in a story or in a narrative. One thing will make me think of something else. Um, and I think that it's that way for a lot of people. Um, and hearing someone else talk about it can bring up memories and stuff too, or think about, oh yeah, it was like that or whatever.
Yeah, that's why another reason I think the podcast I'm doing is so important is because I've had so many people, like the interview I just did. I posted her video and she hit me up today. She's like, my Instagram is blowing up. And I was like, in a good way or a bad way? She's like, no, 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 a good way. Like, I'm talking
Yeah,
to people now that haven't talked to me for years, or like they're reaching out to me and stuff, or she was just getting hella people messaging her, asking her about the program.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's hella cool. Hella
And
cool.
we're definitely in the phase where we need more awareness, like literally thousands of times more awareness, um, so that parents can make better choices, and so that educators and people who refer to these places will know that it's not safe to refer to them. And like one of the things I'm working on right now is trying to help um, coordinate information for insurance providers so that they know that these places are dangerous and that they won't automatically authorize a kid to go to one of these places. Because a lot of the way that they're getting money for these facilities is by getting it from insurance companies. Another big source is they're getting like court orders for kids to be there. And I think wherever the pipeline is coming from, we just got to work to let people know that it's not safe to send kids here and that they're going to end up with more problems. And here is a rare situation where the insurance company wanting to save money and us wanting to get kids not abused are lining up to say, like, just say no, don't send kids to these kind of places, don't even consider it, um so that the abuse will stop, and especially so that they know what the red flags are, and like um what's dangerous, um and that kind of thing. um
Yeah. So,
And I'm sure the people who were abusing us never in their wildest dreams thought that I would turn around and help write the legislation to make the things that they did that were abusive specific crimes, and to stop these kind of abusive situations. Like, they thought there would be no consequences. They thought that we were just kids that no one would believe. But um we're adults now, and there's power in that, and power in just telling the truth about what happens. um
totally. Totally. Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Well, we're about at 3 hours, so thank you so much for coming on. And if you ever want to do a part three, if you remember more stuff and you want to do a part three, let me know.
okay,
We'll
we
do as many.
might do that in the future. I gotta think. I'm glad I have a list. I can at least go through what we talked about this time, and then I'll see if there's more. um
Yeah, no,
yeah.
no, no pressure. If there isn't, there isn't. But I'm just leaving it open. You know, there could always be more.
Well,
I always remember and
I'm
shit.
thinking how we went through the bite model and went through step by step with the different ones and talked about them. I'm thinking we could probably do that with that Russian book, with the different methods of psychological pressure. and what we had seen. Um,
Yeah, that could be potentially an episode right there.
yeah,
So yeah, let me know.
so grateful that you're willing to interview so many different people and to spread the news about this and to do all the work of editing and putting things up and spending the time and that kind of thing. Because this is our future, and um, I want a future with no new survivors, where we don't have kids with trauma from these kind of facilities, and it takes a lot of work. Um, so thanks for being part of that.
Yeah, no problem. I'll keep it going. I'll just keep on trucking
Yeah,
on for sure. Well, you have a wonderful night, and thank you so much for coming on.
and we'll talk more about what groups you're having problems in. Um, we can probably do something about that. Um, like
Okay.
I could, I might be able to tell you, hey, just do da da da. Or I might be able to talk to the person who runs whatever. Um, because I've been doing this for a very long time. Um,
Okay.
and you're legit. You're not
Yeah.
just ding on this, you know?
Yeah. You know, I'm not just advertising. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
because it would be different if I was making multiple posts a day about the same episode. That to me is
yeah,
advertising. That to me is more
yeah,
along the lines of advertising. But just like letting people know when I have a new episode, like which is not even every day anymore.
yeah,
See, and also, I don't feel like it's my fault or my problem that not that many people are engaging in that group. That's not my problem. That's a
yeah,
group problem in my opinion. So just because all they're seeing is my post, that just means that I've been the most active person in the group in my opinion.
yeah,
You know what I mean? But
yeah.
that's just me. And
And it
I'm
may be like it requires better like content warning, or it may be that they say you can only post once a week, or like, because I've helped moderate some groups before, and these have all been like things that people have requested, but I don't think it's impossible for you to post in groups and get the message out there. Um, I think they probably just want like a couple changes. Like we could figure that out. Because part of it's because I used to always be the one posting stuff that people would get mad that I was posting in their group. Um, Honestly, because when I first started, I didn't understand like content warnings at all. That was the biggest thing for me, is I was like really triggering people with like poems and memories and thoughts. And some people just needed to go there to have a peaceful place and not be traumatized, you know. And I caused problems with that in one of the groups I was in, not even meaning to, just trying to um, help with people. So yeah, we'll talk more. I think I can help you. Um, I don't remember what groups it was. We'll talk. You message me about that, and like what groups you're in that you're having problems in, and I'll see who I know.
okay. Sounds good. We will do that. All right. Well, you have a wonderful night.
You too. Good
Yeah.
night. Sleep well. Give your kitty
Sleep.
some extra hugs.
I will. I will. Give your dog some extra hugs.
Yep, for sure.
All right. Have a wonderful night.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.